So I'll call the meeting to order at 7:04. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Let me get to the right document. Okay, Mr. Allred.
Here.
Ms. Billman. Mr. Fell.
Here.
Mr. Hopkins. I believe it looks like
Hopkins,
you're muted.
Your mic's on muted.
Here.
Okay, thanks. Ms. McFarland.
Here.
Ms. Sims, Mr. Weiskopf, and Ms. Yu.
Here.
All right, great. So it looks like we have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, approval of the minutes. These are the minutes from the September 9th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission. Are there any motions or comments on the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We got a motion by Mr. Fell and a second by Mr. Hopkins. Any discussion, any changes? If not, can we get a roll call, please?
Yep. Ms. McFarland.
Yes.
Ms. Yu.
Here.
Oh,
This is the
yeah.
vote on the minutes. All right.
Yeah.
okay, excellent. Mr. Allred.
Yes.
Mr. Fell.
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Do we have any communications?
We do not.
Okay, continued public hearings. We have one. That's plan case number 2425T21. That case is going to be continued to the October 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. We have no old business, no new public hearings, no new business. Audience participation. Is there anyone who wishes to address the Plan Commission for 4 minutes of uninterrupted time on a topic of your choice? If so, raise your hand. Any of the participants want to address the Plan Commission? Any of the attendees, I mean? All right. So it looks like there is no audience participation. Staff report.
No staff report.
No staff report. Okay, so then we are moving into the main topic for tonight, which is our study session and a review of the draft 2005 comprehensive plan assessment. So we're going to have a presentation from staff tonight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lily and Andrea are gonna take the reins on that. I'm just gonna sit back.
All right, sounds good.
Lily,
all yours.
She needs to share the screen.
I'm working on it. Oh,
Yep.
everybody's okay. Good. Cool. So we've got a quick update. Here we go. A little bit about Imagine Urbana. Andrea, do you want to talk a little bit about this? Made a couple.
Yeah, since our last meeting, we've had some activities that we've been at, so our numbers have changed somewhat. We're now up to 105 hours of in-person outreach, and our website hits have grown to over 3,500. We've met with, we have a couple of events coming up this weekend, Pride Fest, and also the Head Start Awareness Walk at Meadowbrook that we will be at. This past week, we were at Lights for the Night, and also Bike to Work Day. A lot of great feedback, and so just wanted you to know that we're out trying to reach audiences that we haven't reached so far in our data input. So just if anybody has any questions or has any ideas about where we should be, we'd love to hear them, and look forward to your comments.
Here we actually have a breakdown right now where we're at with survey results. We've got 177 surveys that have been completed, and some of those surveys are in person at those events. People sit down in chairs, they sit down in the grass, they sit down on the curb, and they fill out a survey right then and there. Some people will go online, and from that, we also have an additional 164 idea wall submissions. We have 163 places that have been pinned on the website, imagineurbana.com. We have about 30 futuregrams. Those were really popular over the summer with a lot of events. We talked a little bit about that in August, but we had a couple of events where people had, while music was playing, while activities were there, people had a lot of fun enjoying some of like coloring and writing out what they wanted to see for the future of Urbana. We've had one bingo card submission, though we do have a deadline for later in the month for the bingo card submissions. We've had a lot of bingo cards handed out, so who knows how many more have been completed. And then we've had over 600 bookmarks distributed. So we've been working with the library, but they've been really popular, especially on campus, and a couple of other community-wide events like Labor Day, where people really enjoyed having the texting number and the survey texting number all in a smaller piece of paper for them to carry around and fill out the survey after that. And we've had text survey recipients since then.
Ms. Wilcox, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Have you noticed, so you've had like several of these events, and I know the postcards have went out because I received one maybe last week or the week before. Have you noticed a bump after any of these events or the mailings in terms of survey responses?
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, absolutely. So the postcard has brought in quite a few surveys, and that's been really helpful. The bookmarks, it's harder to track, but we've had after Labor Day and after Light the Night, we had a couple of people fill them out on spot and in front of us. So we're pretty confident that with Light the Night, Bike to Work Day, the Farmers Market, and Labor Day, between those four larger events, we've had quite a few texting surveys as well. So a lot of conversations. Most of those conversations are centered around what is the comprehensive plan and who is the city of Urbana. And a lot of folks are actually really surprised to hear about the process and really surprised to hear from the city. And explaining a little bit more about that has been kind of a barrier to participation, but also been a really good opportunity to answer questions and educate folks more generally about the city and what a comprehensive plan is.
And while you're on that, can you remind the viewing public what resources are out there on the website that do explain some of this in terms of what is the comprehensive plan and who is the city and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm really glad you asked, because they're on the website. If you go to imagineurbana.com, which I can always pull up a little bit, but there is an about page in case you're ever interested in knowing more and learning more about what is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan on that page, it answers a little bit about what a comprehensive plan does. Traditionally could be more of a land use and transportation plan, but it oftentimes is a strategic policy document for the whole city, and it's a long range policy document. So it's the city kind of strategically thinking about the future, what we need to address and how we're going to address it. And there's some videos. One video is a really good video on our website. It's on the front page. If you just go to imagineurbana.com, you'll see various residents across Urbana. One of our plan commissions here, Deb McFarland, speaking about what the Imagine Urbana and the comprehensive plan is to them. And there's a high school student, there's a shopper from downtown, there is a parent at the U of I. There's a wide variety of people who are showcased and wanted to share what the comprehensive plan is to themselves. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people because it is fairly comprehensive. Did that address that question?
Yeah, no, wasn't really a question. Just wanted you to just give you the chance to promote this, since we could have some people watching and don't necessarily know what it's all about.
No, I really appreciate it.
We mentioned the idea wall. There's also an Urbana Places map where you can pin places and talk about those places that mean something to you or something that you would like to have improved, as well as the survey is on the website as well. So you can take the survey via the website, or you can take it via our texting number now that's active, that was advertised in the postcard over the weekend. And it's available in 4 languages, French, Spanish, Chinese, and English.
I appreciate you mentioning that. We actually kind of tailored this presentation to knowing that you all have seen a presentation in August. So there a lot of the background information isn't there. So I really appreciate that.
Bringing it up.
Yeah. Just also as a quick update, the University of Illinois Urban Planning Department of Urban and Regional Planning is doing their urban planning plan making class 510 with us again. And that is an amazing opportunity to really hone in on public engagement and where we're missing some of our voices in the city of Urbana, and making sure that we capture that and working towards that goal. This semester, that class, led by Dustin Allred, is working in 3 neighborhoods, King Park, Learman, East Crystal Lake neighborhood. Outside of working full-time for the city of Urbana, I'm a student in that class, and the classmates there are thinking very creatively and out of the box about how they're going to engage people from areas where the city doesn't necessarily have the resources to really contact those people and be at those locations. So building those relationships is the long-range goal for the class, and capturing that Imagine Urbana and imagining Urbana and what those community needs and what the community, how they feel about the future is really the goal of the class. Another segment of that class is working with Lou Hopkins and Dustin on a autonomous mapping tool. So that's really looking at the environment of planning in Champaign County and in Urbana. And that's taking a look at all the different plans that affect individual properties and having them as overlays. One property may have a TIF plan interact with the comprehensive plan, that may interact with the park district, that may interact with many different layers of planning in the community. I don't know if anybody on this might want to contribute a little bit more to that. Class is just getting started.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good description. It's not just for looking at plans and how they affect parcels, but also to aid the plan making process. So, if a corridor study is being done, being able to understand and visualize and access all of the different plans and potential capital improvements projects, right, infrastructure projects that may affect what is being thought about for that particular area.
Really helpful. In the process of working on the Urbana Comprehensive Plan, I've been looking at a lot of communities and a lot of communities' plans, and every community has a different way of trying to describe this unique situation that many communities are in with trying to work around many different autonomous areas of planning. So very cool. Before we get into the assessment document tonight, of course, usually when releasing the assessment document on Friday, we had a couple of folks already reach out to us and suggest edits. So we have a couple of changes. One of the changes, besides just generally a couple of typos, there are also action statements that will be added to the executive summary. They're the exact same thing as the lessons learned, but just a statement, an affirmative that we will be working on that, and we're going to try to make sure that the future comprehensive plan, the one we're working on currently, will address those comments and concerns and lessons. Another one is the timeline. If the timeline in the goals and objectives section looks graphically even between all the years, that's been adjusted a little bit to look a little bit more like how time really is captured in those achievements and accomplishments. So maybe in 2005, you have a lot of different accomplishments, and then maybe in 2007, you don't have very many. And so those numbers have been adjusted as it's much more of a little bit of a formatting change. So those comments we're still taking, of course. We'd love to have your comments tonight, and we will incorporate that into the final document. It will be posted on Imagine Urbana's website, and it will be also posted on the City of Urbana's website as a supporting document. City Council will get an update of this and provide likely comments and get an overview of the document on October 4th. So I'm going to go over a couple things about the assessment document, the 2005 Comprehensive Plan assessment. How did we review the plan? So quickly, I'm going to mention that this all started because not only did we think it was really important to review the plan and what went into it and why it's important to learn from the plan. It's a great plan. It's an amazing plan, honestly. It did a lot of things in a very under 100 pages that was able to last the city for a very long time. It also had some things that today, looking back in hindsight, we can improve upon as well. So the 2005 plan, while we were reviewing it, we also had a continual, constant question from people that we were talking to as to what happened after the last comprehensive plan? What did you actually accomplish? And so we wanted to have something that we could show folks as to what the comprehensive plan accomplished and what it can do, as well as, and we'll get more into that into Examine Urbana, the existing conditions, but also what we can really take from that and where we'd like to go next in the next comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan and how it was reviewed. Each department was given a list of different implementation strategies, goals, and objectives that were associated with them. And each department was responsible with going through each and every one of them with me and Andrea in evaluating those implementation strategies and evaluating those goals and strategies. We were able to compile that data, and it was a little bit of a laborious task. One of the takeaways from the 2005 plan is the idea of success on a goal and objective and the idea of an implementation strategy's success. We didn't really agree on where the goalposts were for that in the plan, which is something that a lot of plans today do, but at the time wasn't necessarily the norm. And so with that not agreeing on the goalposts and what success looked like, there had to be a lot of back work to do, and a lot of staff turnover has happened since 2005, as you can imagine. There's a lot of research that went into the process of reviewing the 2005 plan. Really quickly, a couple of the lessons learned, and I'm going to summarize in the executive summary. We learned that there is a neighborhood and corridor level lens, and there's a comprehensive lens. Some neighborhoods, particularly some of the most powerful neighborhoods, had a really honed in approach and a lot of detail added to it. And they didn't experience a lot of success from that detail too. So not only did we have a lot of areas of Urbana who didn't get the same level of treatment and attention, we also didn't see the same level of success that we had from some things that we left on a higher level, a more comprehensive and community-wide level. So we're going to try in the next comprehensive plan to stay at a community-wide level, a more comprehensive level, and really try to treat neighborhoods and corridors more equally and fairly across the community. That also allows us to dig a little bit deeper, get into issues, and it could be more effective in reading those neighborhoods that have a lot of needs and have a lot of issues going on. One neighborhood's issues are going to be wildly different than another neighborhood's issues on the other side of town. And I think that's a concept that a lot of people can get behind. So when you have a comprehensive plan and you try to codify one neighborhood's issues, it becomes really tricky when you translate that to another neighborhood. Integration of citywide issues with land use and transportation. The comprehensive plan, our current comprehensive plan, the 2005 plan, didn't really walk wildly outside of land use and transportation, which is great. It kept the scope at where it was. A lot of folks, when we're talking to the people across the city of Urbana, they have a little bit less of the understanding about land use and transportation and how that relates to the issues that they're seeing on a day-to-day basis. So translating that information in land use and transportation and growth and development into things like public safety, community health, access to food, all of those things are really important for us to really be having a much more transparent and easy to digest conversation, but also be working better with our community partners, other government agencies that work on the same issues. So that was another aspect of the comprehensive plan that we'd like to kind of expand upon past the 2005 plan. The actions that we took versus what we were actually prioritized in the comprehensive plan. That was another lesson that we learned. We evaluated the plan. We said we were going to evaluate the plan on an annual or maybe biannual basis. We said we were going to update the plan every 5 years. While those were really amazing intentions and we should try to stick to them, we weren't able to reach that. So there's something to be said about staff capacity. And when you don't update those plans more often, or you give yourself an annual or biannual update, it's very difficult for the community to really stay on that strategic level of thinking. Oftentimes, you can sometimes get bogged down into really what the issue of the day is, and then you lose sight of some things that aren't screaming for attention, like public facilities. Another lesson learned, equity integration in 2005 in the services and infrastructure goal for the theme of the plan. We talk a little bit about affordable housing. We talk a little bit about equity issues across the community. We talk a little bit less about issues that affect just certain communities across the community, certain neighborhoods across the community. And so that part of just really minimizing and compartmentalizing equity across the community and really focusing, again, back to that just land use and transportation needs to be expanded upon. Equity is something that is going to be integrated across the city, and people are expecting us to integrate that across the city in a comprehensive plan. And the time spent planning. So this, I feel just a teensy bit like, a little funny about, but it is important for us to try to find out what those goalposts are and try to stick to a schedule as best as possible. It is very difficult to do that with the staff capacity that we have and then the aspirations that we have sometimes, but oftentimes, and we've seen this, Andrea and I have already seen this a couple times across the city. When your process is very, very long, people have immediate needs, staff have immediate needs, the city has immediate needs to get planning done much more expediently. And then you have multiple planning processes going on at once when in theory, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, many people would say, well, we needed the comprehensive plan first. We'd like to try to meet that a little bit. One observation from the 2005 comprehensive plan, for instance, is that a lot of the public input was really focused around the Urbana Walmart. Urbana Walmart was a huge community issue. A lot of public input was expended upon it. And by the time that the comprehensive plan was actually initiated, the Urbana Walmart was constructed and already part of the city. And there's a couple of different other instances too as well, where the planning process took a little bit longer. And by the time we got to the plan adoption and the politics that were involved in that and the implementation that was involved in that, implementation strategies were already starting to be implemented or almost done. So that was another aspect of the planning process. So right now I'm going to end this slideshow. And I'm going to share my screen and just really quickly for the public. Here you can see the comprehensive plan. Past those lessons learned, there is an input process. We go over a little bit about what the input process was on the last comprehensive plan. Take you back to 2001 to 2005. The amendments that have happened since, a little bit of analysis, goals and objectives, and how the plan was structured. Some plan goals and objectives had a lot of strategies affiliated with it, and not all of them were incredibly actionable. Some of them were kind of vague and they were hard to implement. Whereas we had many more, we had about over 100 implementation strategies that had no goals and objectives with them, but they were very implementable. So we did try to do our best in evaluating the success and the effectiveness of those goals and objectives. And you can see more in a detailed summary of that in the appendix. And here's a quick timeline of accomplishments. The 2005 plan did do a lot for Urbana. You can get a quick summary of that. There were implementation strategies, 247, 87 implementation strategies for 247 goals and objectives. Some of these words that you're seeing here are, these are the most common words used in the implementation strategies. And I do want to emphasize that the plan was rarely, if ever, referring to a comprehensive plan. It was almost always referring to the fact that we were going to strategize to make another plan. That's an important distinction for what happened in the following years. Breakdown for implementation strategies is what you can find in here. Timing, long-term goals were harder to implement. Strategy types, coordination between different government agencies. Certain neighborhoods got a lot more attention than other neighborhoods in Urbana. We actually had only one board and commission mentioned, and it was the Historic Preservation Commission, which goes back to the land use and transportation discussion and what you can find next. So with that, I can talk a little bit more about next steps for the presentation. Sorry. Wait 1 second. Next steps, the city is working on Examine Urbana. So much like the assessment document, there are multiple departments across the city. There's multiple people within the community that will be working with us on existing conditions. And existing conditions we're calling Examine Urbana, as we're trying to make it as accessible as possible for people to understand what we're trying to show, which is what is Urbana. And we're trying to use as much local data as possible to show that. And you can see here a screen clip from the draft Examine Urbana. There's many different topics that we're going to be covering, and we're going to dive into those with our community partners as well as experts on staff, and providing that data to kind of show what Urbana is to people. How did we get here? Where would we like to go? And what are some things to consider?
What's the time frame for that?
The time frame for that would be winter, spring in 2021, 2022. You'll be the first one to review it for sure. We're actually, a lot of these different topics here do have advisory commissions or boards and commissions across Urbana. So a lot of them will be involved also in reviewing the information and providing feedback and comments. And then after the urban planning class, plan making at the University of Illinois wraps up in December, we'll start kind of closing down this public and more general form of public input. And we'll start going into processing that information. And we'll, as quickly as possible, we'll try to get a public input story map going, a place where you can kind of see what happened, where the information was collected, what are some of the things that people are talking about. A little bit of what you saw in August with Lena Walker, our summer intern, the information that she processed, and then the information that we've collected since then as well being incorporated into that. And that is the presentation.
Great, thank you. So do we have questions for Ms. Wilcock or Ms. Rudy? Mr. Hopkins.
So I need to give some preface for other people. I did read to the end of Appendix B, and indeed it did confirm that maybe I should be a planner. Also, for context, I think I am the only one on the commission, on staff, in city government. I haven't checked the Public Works Department, but who was actually involved in 2005. So my perspective is perhaps at a level of detail that most of the rest of the commission, much less the public, may want to be involved in. But I guess my reaction is the assessment is in-depth, complete, and I'd rather spend less time trying to edit or modify anything in the assessment, and more time going into, at some level and at some point, a lot of detail about some of the specifics, both substantively, methodologically, and representationally, of what we've learned. That is, I think there's all kinds of very specific things that we can work on here. And so what I might do for a study session is identify some of the chunks of stuff. And then my guess is it will be appropriate for me to get together with staff in some other forum and work on some of the details. And again, this, from my point of view, this has nothing to do with slowing down. You're moving this forward to the council or whatever. For its purpose, I think it's fine. It just has a lot of stuff in it that we can work with. So I tried to organize some of this, but it probably won't come out as cleanly as I hope. So one thing I'll want to talk about is substance, about which things got done, which things didn't get done, and why, both historically, contextually, and because of the way they were framed in the plan, which may have helped them or not helped them or made them irrelevant or whatever. And there's a lot of context. I mean, Lily mentioned that the Walmart thing. But you also have to remember that in 2005, the university was going to completely redevelop Orchard Downs into a private new development. Menards had just bought, I don't remember, 160, 240 acres, was going to create not only a store, but a huge subdivision. This was all pre-2008. So some of what seems, sort of explainable by some other means, we have to really understand what we were talking about at the time. So that's one sort of general area that I could spend a lot of time on. Another way of looking at it is also not the substance of what was said, but how it was said and how it was written down. That's what the words we used, which I think were badly chosen and very confusing. And the best I've been able to do over the years is figure that we need to use, say, 3 synonyms for every word we try to use in order to be able to communicate what we're talking about. When we talk about goals, objectives, and strategies, for example, they can mean the opposite of each other to many people. And they were bad descriptors. But as an example there, we have to think about how these things are used. So for example, one of the uses of what are called goals is to write the staff reports for plan commission meetings where they have to have something to justify the zoning decision. And those have to be worded in a particular way. They have to be long-term, very stable. They have to have a lot of backing from a legal justification point of view. And they're a particular kind of thing. And some of what's in there are those, and they get used every plan commission meeting. But you can't tell which ones are really for that purpose and which ones are more like what you're thinking of as targets or goalposts, which are completely different. So the goals from the plan commission use point of view are really criteria for decision-making that have been established to justify a process. So anyway, I'm sort of doing what I said. I'm using synonyms to clarify what things are. And it's very clear that the listing of goals and strategies and objectives was totally confusing. And your assessment report makes that very clear. But later, going into detail, I think we can do a lot better. So a third thing, and this to me may be one of the most crucial things. So actually, let me make that the fourth thing and identify a third thing. In the user engagement process, one of the things I think maybe we need to do a little more of is engaging the plan users. And so what I'm saying here is the example I already gave, those goals are used by planning staff or plan staff reports to commission in a very specific way. And being clear about that use of a plan document so that it serves that use is important. But there are also other users of the plan document. Public Works mentions they use the mobility map, for example, for their arterial street things, which is one of its uses. And the other agencies use some of these things as well. So we not only have to think about who the plan users are, but well, we have to make sure we have thought about who they are and talk to them. because it's not only the public in a way that uses the plan. So then maybe to a fourth major thing. I think there is a real potential opportunity here and a real potential danger here, let me put it that way, about the way we're imagining the scope of this plan. And what I mean by that is that one of the ways to think of Urbana's planning is as a collection of planning activities and plans that are made, unlike comp plans, which take 5 years to make and are therefore out of date by the time they're done. For example, there is also an annual council action plan. And we want to make sure that we are not pretending that the annual council action plan is part of the comprehensive plan, which must also serve justification legally for land use decisions, because the annual council action plan has to be a 1 year, every year, current council members, new mayor. I mean, after the 2005 plan, we got a complete turnover in the council. And it looks like in this case, we got it just before the comp plan was completed. All right. So the council's action plan can't be embedded in or overpowered by the comp plan process. But we have to think very clearly about how they are linked. So in the implementation strategies, one of the things that strategies included was to-do lists. That is actions. And actions can be completed. Goals can't be. They can be reached, okay? Criteria can't be completed because they apply to whatever comes up next. That is, criteria, goals in the sense of criteria for land use decisions, remain and have to remain stable for a long period of time, because otherwise they're not justifications. So we've got to be really clear on what these things are. And so an example of the linking problem is that in the strategies table, there are actions assigned to the council. All right. Those actions are looked at every year in the council's action plan. Or are they? That is, the point is, what needs to happen is we need to think about these plans as interacting live phenomena, not as something that we're going to get done in 2 years, but as one piece that happens, typically takes 3 to 5 years to do, has a 20-year cycle, among many other things, some of which happen every year on a 1-year cycle. And the capital improvements, which were also included in the strategies, as far as I can tell at the moment, Urbana is doing its capital improvement plan on a 3-year cycle. And I think that's a problem. But that cycle and the things that we think are in the comp plan strategies have to be real from the point of view of the capital improvements program. Either these things are related or, we're sort of wasting our time spending 3 years creating a comp plan that pretends to also be a CIP. And then another example of this is the question of neighborhood detail and community-wide that Lily was talking about. And I think we have to be careful here as well. if we're trying to be community-wide and not deal with neighborhood details, I think that's a problem, because that's going to lead to vagueness. And if we're going to create citywide criteria for land use decisions or for other kinds of decisions, that is what I think of as policies. If in these conditions we do this in Urbana, then we can set those up. But if we're going to do anything at the level of detail that most neighborhoods actually care about, we either have to say, okay, we're going to do neighborhood plans and they will be linked to the comp planning process, which is in fact what we do de facto. Or we're going to somehow deal with levels of detail specific to neighborhoods in the comp plan process as well. So to me, this is the biggest problem. And another way of thinking about it is the Plan Commission uses the plan in a particular way. And the Plan Commission, much of what we do is review zoning decisions, annexation decisions, subdivision review, special use permits, PUDs, okay? We shouldn't think of something that is identified with the Plan Commission as being a plan for all of the city of Urbana's activities. So a flip way of thinking about that is that if we're going to look at all of the city's activities, then the traditional comp plan is only one part of the city's planning activity. So I guess what I'm getting back to is, again, sort of the use of synonyms to, other ways of saying things, is maybe we should separate the idea of Imagine Urbana from the idea of a comp plan. Because the baggage of a comp plan and the aspirations of Imagine Urbana, I think, are in conflict. And I think, as I would go back to, I think it's a great opportunity to think of a way of talking about Urbana planning writ large as being an ongoing process with many plan-making elements at different time intervals, different time horizons, et cetera. And so I guess to conclude, looking at the assessment report reinforced my view of this significantly. So it's useful research as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Any other questions or comments from the commission for staff? Can I ask, so this report's going to be put up on, oh, Ms. McFarland, did I see that you were
Yeah,
gonna...
I just want to say that I
Sure.
thank him for putting it like there in like really elementary terms, because that is really making sense now. And your explanation helped me a lot, because I was thinking like the two plans were together, but they're not. And each side of Urbana needs different things and everybody had their own thoughts. So the way you broke it out, I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks. So I just had a question about how the assessment report's going to be made available to the public. So it sounds like you're just going to put the PDF up on the Imagine Urbana website, which doesn't seem that, terribly friendly. Is it possible to pull some of this out and display it on the website in a way that's a little bit more accessible to, as Mr. Hopkins says, the non-planners necessarily? Because I think it's important for people to see not just what wasn't completed and what is still, something that we want to think about in terms of future agendas and future strategies and actions, but also what accomplishments happened since 2005.
And I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Allred, that PDFs aren't necessarily something that encourages or invites anyone to really read it. So that's a really good point. Examine Urbana will have a story and a flowing website, like cascading website, just for breaking down the 2005 comprehensive plan and that assessment and the lessons learned and what we're working towards. In the midst of that, there's a gap between now in September and now when that is done and ready, be launched for the public consumption, which would be in the winter. And in that, we can actually pull out parts of the summary, the process, the goals and objectives, and we can set up a page on the city's website as well as Imagine Urbana for that. But the full kind of the full like interactive portion of that will be something that will be incorporated into Examine Urbana.
I think the current executive summary is I think pretty good. And obviously I'm a bad sample of what a non-planner wants to see, but one of the things I did is after I got to the end of Appendix B and a few days later, I went back and looked at the executive summary. And my reaction was, yeah, if you wanted a big picture, it's actually there. So maybe one option is to put the executive summary up, and you said you've tweaked a few things, but and make a little more difficult to find, but provide a link to the rest of the report, and the rest of the report includes a link to the appendices for, people like me, of which there may only be me.
You're the second person to get to the end of Appendix B that at least has told me that they got to the end. So it was very cool. Very, very cool. That's only two, and that's one of you. You're one of them. So
Yeah, well,
I made it to page 45.
Mr. Hopkins, I really like the idea of posting the executive summary with the link to the full document. So to get people to read really the crux of it, and then they can certainly then go to the full report for the additional detail and more information. I like that a lot.
But it's something you have and can be put up. And as Lily was saying, that means you don't wait longer than now to put it up. And it's something that I think is worth putting up now because it gives people something to react to.
Yeah, I like that.
I think there's some of the graphics could be pulled out and support some of the specific sort of findings in the executive summary too. So that might, just to add something that's a little more visual to it, I think that might be worth doing.
I was thinking that those were in the executive summary. Yeah. Well, I'll look at the executive summary and send a comment if I think specifics. But I would also be wary of using the bar graph graphics that link goals and actions and percentages accomplished, et cetera, because I think those apparent large aggregate results are really artifacts of a whole bunch of stuff that in the end is not very informative. The specific examples, the accomplishment timeline, and some of the interpretation in the executive summary of key findings, I think are more useful. And that goes back to my comment about the implementation strategies were really 5 different kinds of things that trying to evaluate whether they got done or not. In many cases makes no sense.
I have another question. I'm kind of going off of something that Mr. Hopkins said. This kind of debate between keeping the focus high level, something that applies community-wide versus bringing in some of the neighborhood specifics, which would obviously help in terms of the kind of decisions, not decisions, but the kind of reviews and recommendations that the Plan Commission and other commissions make. And I know, and I don't think there was a strategy in the previous plan that specifically said something about doing neighborhood planning across the board. There are certain neighborhoods that were called out as needing a plan or a study, but there was a strategy that had to do with building capacity for neighborhood planning. It sounded like something like that. Has there been a discussion? I mean, you do find comprehensive plans that essentially are a collection of neighborhood plans. So comprehensive in the sense that there is a neighborhood plan for every neighborhood. So is that something that has ever been considered either for this plan or in the past?
Lily, I'm gonna jump in here because Mr. Allred is kind of leading into something I was wanting to address with Mr. Hopkins' comments. So we've talked about. Well, first, I guess I want to be clear. I think when Lily was describing this plan as being community-wide, I think what she is saying is we're going to treat all neighborhoods with the same level of detail across Urbana. So if you look at the current plan, there's a couple areas in town that, it's like we really sharpened our pencils and we made very, very fine, almost parcel level detail in those neighborhoods. And then other neighborhoods were sort of painted with a broader brush. So I think our idea that we've kicked around is we're gonna treat all neighborhoods with the same level of detail. So it's gonna be higher up than a neighborhood level plan, but it's certainly not going to be just community level where it's like this stuff is applied all over, because all of our neighborhoods are different. And like Lily said, they all have different needs. I think the city of Memphis did a really fine job in their award-winning comprehensive plan where they identified different types of neighborhoods. So like they might have some neighborhoods that were really booming and growing, and they treated those and, they put those into a certain category. And then other ones, might not have seen the level of investment over the years. So they kind of separate them out into, and then they identify those neighborhoods as having different needs. And I feel like I lost my train of thought. Like, I feel like I was going somewhere else with this. But I did just want to state those things. Oh yeah, I think I wanted to make another point about something that Lou said, but I'll wait because I kind of want to let the whole neighborhood and community level thing percolate.
Well, and I just want to add something to the assessment aspect of it. The plans and the neighborhoods that we said we were going to kind of do that kind of deeper dive in neighborhood level planning aspect to, were not the plans that we actually ended up making neighborhood plans for or corridor plans for. And that says a lot about the adoption in the strategic level of the comprehensive plan that we'd like to kind of look again at and do a little bit better job of. And then the second aspect of that is, yes, getting down into, there are neighborhoods, all neighborhoods have said things that they would like to see improved upon. And there are some that are very specific to those areas. And there's a lot of conflict involved in that. And neighborhood planning can be really, could be used possibly as a tool to help resolve some of that conflict, but also build a relationship and build bridges into those areas that the city of Urbana could, in the comprehensive plan, community-wide, higher level thinking could maybe benefit from, particularly in the decision-making level.
Oh yeah, and I want to jump in because Lily, you just jogged my memory because I did have someplace I wanted to go because Dustin was asking about neighborhood plans, and that's something we've talked about is that after we adopt the comprehensive plan, which will have whatever level of detail for each neighborhood, I feel like after we do that, then it might be time to sort of tackle some neighborhood plans. I'm not sure exactly how we would do that since we have a dozen or so identifiable neighborhoods. So I don't know, do we do one a year for 12 years and then then by the end of that are they is the first couple stale? So I'm not sure, but we've had those discussions. We haven't figured out exactly how we're going to tackle it, but it's definitely on our minds.
Well, we have a lot of semesters of workshop classes that we can help out with there.
You kind of read my mind there. So.
Any other questions or comments out there?
Okay, so I might jump in and address something that Luke brought up earlier. So this idea of language and making a plan where we're very deliberate about the language that we use. It's a big focus, and Lou, when you said the executive summary was good, we made a conscious effort to write that not in planner jargon. We try to make everything we write in the planning division understandable for non-planners, that is the vast majority of people in Urbana or wherever. So we're not, our plan is not to write the plan for planners. That's a lot of plan there. But it is to, make it accessible for most everybody. And also, though, I like your points about being deliberate and not using terms that are easily confused or just confusing, especially for implementing things.
Yeah, I guess the challenge is doing that, but then also producing something that Plan Commission can use to evaluate whether or not a rezoning or a PUD meets these criteria, right? So I guess that's one of Mr. Hopkins' comments.
Yeah, well, and an example, because a lot of planners use the term goals for that purpose, we can say goals or criteria for land use decision making. If we are making an agenda, which is one word, or an action list, we can say, or a to-do list, which is what most people call their action lists or their agendas when they make them for the day or the week or whatever. And that's what it is. It's a list of things we're supposed to do, and you can mark them off as complete, as any web app for doing it will allow you to do. And it will allow you to schedule them. And so trying to schedule criteria or necessarily spending a lot of effort linking your to-do list to your criteria, it may be more important to think, when I do an action, does it fit my criteria? Rather than thinking, for this criterion, what's the way of implementing it? Is sort of looking at it in reverse. because most people, most agencies, most organizations have some form of to-do list. It's a work plan, it's an annual action list, it's whatever.
Anything else? I feel like the two planners can just go on and keep asking questions potentially, but
Yeah,
Any-
and as I said, it probably makes sense to have a planners and staff meeting rather than trying to do this all through a study session.
That would be amazing amongst staff. Just speak for staff if I can.
can I go back and ask one more thing? This has more to do with that introduction where you kind of gave us the summary about where you're at currently with the process. So the input, if the gathering input from the public around ideas for their sort of long-term vision of the city ends, say at the end of the year here or sometime in the spring. What does that go into? What does that become input into?
Yeah, so that would go into, there's two different ways that goes into. One, the delivery of that information. So the delivery, that information gets processed and it's delivered into something that would be accessible, maybe a story map, in going through the locations that we were at, the people that we've talked to, and what the people have said that we have talked to, and what that kind of looks like, and breaking that down and what people think of the 20-year outlook, what people think about today, what people are needing from the city of Urbana, and going through that information. The other aspect of that is the content of that. And so that part of it would be, as you kind of saw in August, the presentation from Lena is kind of making sure that we can collect feedback that like with like information and kind of formulate a vision. And that visioning process, what it would be like, would be involving many different people and stakeholders in the community, likely members of council, members, and what we can incorporate into that vision. From that visioning process, then we'd want to kind of narrow that into themes, and those themes would be used for focus groups later on, in discussion groups as well, being a little bit more inclusive into a broader subset of things that are going on across the community.
And so from those focus groups, goals will be defined, or where are the goals going to come out of?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
are the
I mean,
goals, do we want to view the task that way? And it's not clear to me that we should. But again, we may get into a level of detail here pretty quickly, but the notion that we work top down from vision to themes to goals to actions, in the end, in my experience going through these processes, is what often happens is the process in detailed deliberation gets reversed. And the sort of people on the ground, as it were, start figuring and thinking about what are the actions, what are the criteria judgments they need to have, how do those need to be expressed, what are the agencies that actually have to-do lists, and how do we link to them? And then we go back and pretend to link all these things to a bunch of goals that we created in a very confusing way, and a bunch of themes that are generally irrelevant by that time, and a vision which is good for t-shirts. And we may want all those things, but imagining that it happens by working in one direction, vision, themes, and sequentially, de facto, that's not what I observe happens.
Well, I think
Uh,
from the public right now, we have a lot of actions, right? That's the kind of what we're getting from the public is basically actions that they would like to see the city undertake. So I get what you're saying, because we're going to use that to create a vision to come back to these actions that were described. So we don't have to figure this out tonight. I think this is something that probably, as Mr. Hopkins said, deserves a conversation at a different time with staff, maybe. So last chances from any of the other members of the commission. Any last thoughts or questions before we wrap this up? We're not making any kind of recommendation or anything, right? This is just a conversation tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A much beloved conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for all your work in putting this together. I mean, this was I jokingly say I only got to page 45. I just ran out of time. I intend to finish it up, and I think it was really impressive, the level of detail there. Lots of great information.
Well, hurry up, Dustin. You can get the bronze medal for being the third person to make it.
All right, just give me another hour. Okay, well, it sounds like our study session is wrapped then. We don't have the, are we gonna, okay, so we're gonna continue our closed session. We don't need to do anything to continue that, do we? No, okay.
No.
Continuing that indefinitely until we are all in chambers, right? That's the plan. Okay.
That is the plan, yes.
Okay, so that's it. We are adjourned.